Maya Chen wiped grease from her hands and stepped back to admire her work. The old Ford engine hummed perfectly now after 3 hours of careful repairs. She smiled and closed the hood of her neighbor's car. This was what she loved most about fixing things. Taking something broken and making it work again. "Maya, dinner is ready," her mother called from the kitchen window of their small Detroit home. "Coming, Mom," Maya replied, gathering her tools. At 17, she spent most afternoons in their garage, fixing cars and motorcycles for neighbors who couldn't afford expensive repair shops. Her friends thought it was weird for a girl to love engines, but Maya didn't care. She understood how machines worked. They made sense to her in a way that school subjects sometimes didn't. That evening, as Maya sat at the dinner table with her parents, she noticed something strange outside. A soft blue light filled the backyard, growing brighter by the second. Her father looked up from his soup. "What is that light?" he asked. Before anyone could answer, the light became so bright they had to close their eyes. When Maya opened them again, 3 figures stood in their backyard. They were tall and thin with silver skin that seemed to glow. Their eyes were large and completely black. Maya's mother screamed. Her father jumped up and grabbed a kitchen knife. Maya just stared. The beings looked exactly like the aliens in her favorite science fiction books. One of the aliens raised its hand. Suddenly, Maya could hear its voice inside her head speaking perfect English. "Do not be afraid. We are representatives of the Galactic Council. We come in peace." Maya's father held the knife tighter. "What do you want with us?" "We want nothing from you," the alien said. "We seek Maya Chen, age 17, student identification number 847291639. Maya felt her heart stop. "That's my student ID number. How do you know that?" The alien turned its black eyes toward her. "Maya Chen, you have been selected to represent your species at the Nexus Academy. This is a great honor." "I don't understand," Maya said, standing up slowly. "Represent humans where?" "What academy?" The second alien stepped forward. "The Nexus Academy is where the galaxy's most advanced young minds study. Students come from species that have proven themselves worthy of galactic citizenship. Your species has been chosen for evaluation." Maya's mother grabbed her arm. "Evaluation for what?" "To determine if humans deserve to join the galactic community," the third alien explained. "Maya's performance at the academy will decide humanity's future among the stars." The room fell silent except for the ticking of their old kitchen clock. Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. Aliens were real. There was a whole galaxy full of different species, and somehow she had been chosen to represent all of humanity. "Why me?" she asked. "I'm nobody special. I just fix cars and read science fiction books." The first alien tilted its head. "Selection was random from your planet's population of suitable age and basic intelligence. You were simply the name chosen." Maya felt sick. A random lottery. She hadn't been chosen because she was smart or talented or brave. Her name had just been picked from billions of others, and now the fate of her entire species rested on her shoulders. "What if I say no?" she asked. "Then humanity will be classified as unsuitable for advancement and restricted to your solar system forever. You will never travel to other worlds or meet other intelligent species." Maya looked at her parents. Her mother was crying. Her father still held the knife, but his hand was shaking. They looked as scared and confused as she felt. "How long would I be gone?" Maya asked. "1 galactic cycle. In your measurements, approximately 1 year and 3 months. If you succeed in meeting Academy standards, humanity will be welcomed into the galactic community. If you fail, your species will be quarantined indefinitely." The weight of it hit Maya like a physical blow. Not just her future, but the future of every human being on Earth depended on how well she did at some alien school. She thought about her friends who would graduate without her, her parents who would worry every day, her dreams of opening her own repair shop someday. But she also thought about the stars, about other worlds and other kinds of life, about the chance for humanity to be part of something bigger than just one small planet. "Do I have time to pack?" she asked. Her mother sobbed louder. Her father dropped the knife and pulled both Maya and her mother into a tight hug. "You don't have to do this," he whispered. "Let them find someone else." "There is no one else, Dad," Maya said, though her voice shook. "It's me or nobody." The aliens waited patiently while Maya gathered a few belongings. She packed her favorite clothes, some photos of her family, and her grandfather's old toolbox. The aliens told her she wouldn't need much. The academy would provide everything she required, As they prepared to leave, Maya's mother pressed something into her hand. It was a small silver locket that had belonged to Maya's grandmother. "So you remember where you come from," her mother said through her tears. Maya hugged her parents one more time, trying to memorize the feeling of being safe at home. Then she followed the aliens into the blue light. The journey happened in an instant. One moment Maya stood in her backyard in Detroit, and the next she floated in space looking at the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. The Nexus Academy stretched before her like a giant crystal palace, its surfaces reflecting the light of 3 different colored suns. Ships from dozens of different worlds moved around the station like a swarm of glowing insects. "Welcome to your new home," one of the aliens said. As their ship approached the Academy's docking bay, Maya saw other students for the first time. They looked nothing like humans. Some had multiple arms. Others seemed to be made of living metal. A few appeared to be floating clouds of light. Maya suddenly felt very small and very alone. The ship landed with a soft bump. Maya picked up her toolbox and followed the aliens toward the Academy entrance. With each step, she felt the weight of representing her entire species. She was just Maya Chen from Detroit who liked fixing cars, but now she was humanity's only hope of joining the stars. She took a deep breath and walked into her new life, hoping she was strong enough for what came next. Maya's first morning at Nexus Academy began with a sound she had never heard before. It wasn't an alarm clock or a bell. It was more like music mixed with mathematics, flowing through the walls of her room. She opened her eyes to see her roommate Zix already awake, standing perfectly still with its eyes closed. Zix looked like a tall, thin human made of silver metal, but instead of speaking with its mouth, numbers and symbols appeared in the air around its head. Maya had learned yesterday that Zix was a Zephyrian, a species that thought only in probability and logic. "Good morning," Maya said, sitting up in her strange bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud. The numbers around Zix's head changed to show 87.3% probability that greeting indicates positive social intention. Response protocol initiated. Then Zix spoke aloud in a voice that sounded like a computer. "Morning status acknowledged, Maya Chen. Probability of successful day, 23.4%. Maya frowned. "Why so low?" "Today you begin actual classes. Historical data shows 94.7% of new students from unproven species fail their first week." Maya felt her stomach drop. She was already expected to fail. She grabbed her academy uniform, a black outfit that changed colors based on the wearer's mood. Right now it was showing worried blue. The academy's hallways buzzed with students from dozens of different worlds. Maya tried not to stare as she walked to her first class, but it was impossible not to look. Some students floated instead of walking. Others had tentacles instead of arms. A few seemed to be made of living crystal that sparkled as they moved. Her first class was Advanced Mathematics with Professor Helix, a being that looked like a tree made of metal wires. Maya took a seat in the back, hoping to hide among the other students. But as the only human in a room full of aliens, she stuck out like a broken machine. "Today we will explore 17-dimensional calculus," Professor Helix announced. "Please configure your neural processors for quantum mathematical analysis." Maya raised her hand slowly. "I don't have a neural processor." The entire class turned to stare at her. Professor Helix's wire branches twisted in what might have been confusion. "How do you perform complex calculations without direct brain interface?" "I use paper and pencil, sometimes a calculator." The room fell silent. Then a student who looked like a walking diamond started making a sound like glass breaking. Maya realized it was laughing. "Paper and pencil," the crystal being said between laughs. How wonderfully primitive. Professor Helix assigned Maya a basic workstation that could translate the lesson into simple two-dimensional math. But even the simple version was far beyond anything Maya had learned in high school. She spent the entire class period trying to understand the first problem, while other students solved hundreds. Her next class was Galactic History, with Professor Quen, an ancient being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of starlight. This class was even worse. The lesson covered 30,000 years of galactic politics involving 200 different species across 50 star systems. "Can anyone tell me why the Hegemony Wars lasted exactly 847 years?" Professor Quen asked. A student that appeared to be made of living metal raised 3 arms. The collective of minds calculated that 847 years was the optimal duration for maximum learning, with minimum casualties. Correct. "And Miss Chen, Can you tell us how this relates to the Third Reformation? Maya had no idea what the Third Reformation was, let alone how it connected to wars that happened before humans had written language. I'm sorry, Professor. We don't learn galactic history on Earth. Professor Quen's light dimmed slightly. Of course. Your species has only recently discovered fire. Please review chapters 1 through 57 before our next meeting. Maya's uniform turned deep red with embarrassment. Around her, other students whispered in languages that sounded like singing or mechanical beeping. She caught enough words to know they were talking about her. The worst part came during lunch in the Academy's Great Hall. Maya sat alone with her tray of food that she couldn't identify. Everything glowed or moved or made strange sounds when she touched it. She nibbled on something that tasted like chocolate mixed with electricity, and watched other students eat with confidence. At the table next to her, 5 students who shared one body but had separate heads discussed philosophy. Their conversation jumped between topics so fast that Maya couldn't follow any of it. Across the room, a group of cloud-like beings communicated by changing colors and patterns that hurt Maya's eyes to watch. You appear distressed, a voice said behind her. Maya turned to see a student unlike any other. It looked almost human, but with skin that seemed to be made of living rock and eyes that glowed like small suns. The being sat down across from her. I am Thrix, it said. I come from the Insectoid Collective, but I am what my people call defective. I think individual thoughts instead of sharing the hive mind. I'm Maya, she replied. I'm from Earth. I think I'm defective too, but in a different way. Thrix nodded. I have observed you in classes. The other students mock your methods, but you ask questions they do not think to ask. What do you mean? In mathematics class, you asked why the equation was structured that way. Others simply memorize and apply. In history class, you asked what the common people thought about the wars. Others only study the official records. Maya hadn't thought about it that way. She had just been confused and trying to understand. Does that matter? Perhaps, Thrix said. My people believe that questions no one else asks sometimes lead to answers no one else finds. After lunch, Maya attended her final class of the day, Practical Problem Solving with Professor Zur, a being that looked like a walking plant with far too many eyes. This class was supposed to be easier, focusing on real-world applications rather than pure theory. Professor Zur presented the class with a scenario. A colony ship has lost power during a solar storm. You have limited supplies and failing life support. How do you save the colonists? Students immediately began calculating resource ratios, power distribution formulas, and evacuation probabilities. They built complex models and ran thousands of simulations. Maya looked at the problem differently. She imagined herself on that ship, scared and running out of air. What would people actually do in that situation? How would fear change their behavior? What if the optimal solution was impossible to implement because everyone was panicking? Her solution was messier than the others. Instead of perfect resource allocation, she planned for human error. Instead of optimal evacuation routes, she designed flexible systems that could adapt when things went wrong. Instead of eliminating panic, she found ways to use it productively. Professor Zur studied her work with all 17 eyes. Interesting approach, Miss Chen. Highly inefficient, but it accounts for variables others ignored. For the first time all day, Maya felt like maybe she wasn't completely hopeless. As she walked back to her room, she thought about what Thrix had said. Maybe asking different questions wasn't a weakness. Maybe it was something useful. But looking around at her brilliant classmates who seemed to know everything about everything, Maya still felt like she was trying to fix a starship engine with nothing but her grandfather's old wrench set. The question was whether being different would be enough to save humanity's future among the stars. 3 weeks into her time at Nexus Academy, Maya stopped trying to think like everyone else. The change came during Professor Quen's advanced xenobiology class, where students were studying the coral cities of Aquatica Prime. These organisms build perfect underwater metropolises using pure mathematical precision, Professor Quen explained, his jellyfish body pulsing with soft light. Each structure is positioned for maximum efficiency and resource flow. Maya raised her hand. The other students had learned to expect her strange questions by now. But Professor, why do they build art galleries in their cities? Art doesn't help with efficiency. Professor Quen's light flickered with confusion. Art galleries? Yes, sir. In the hologram, I can see spaces that serve no practical purpose. They're decorated with beautiful coral formations that took extra time and energy to create. Why would a perfectly logical species waste resources on beauty? The class fell silent. Keth 9, the collective student with 5 shared minds, spoke up. Beauty serves no logical function. These must be storage areas or maintenance spaces. But Maya had grown up fixing cars in her father's garage. She knew the difference between functional spaces and places where people put things they loved. Look at the patterns, she said, pointing to the hologram. They're not random or efficient. They're designed to be beautiful. These beings don't just build cities. They create homes. Professor Quinn studied the images more carefully. For the first time in centuries of teaching, he was seeing his subject through completely different eyes. Most interesting observation, Miss Chen. Perhaps we should investigate the cultural significance of these structures, not just their biological function. After class, Maya walked to the Academy's observation deck where she often went to think. The 3 suns of the Nexus system painted everything, in colors that had no names on Earth. He was looking out at the stars when someone approached behind her. You see things differently, a voice said. Maya turned to find Echo, a student made of living silicon who moved and spoke much slower than everyone else. Echo's species was considered brilliant, but they processed information at a pace that other students found frustrating. Maya had noticed that Echo often sat alone just like she did. I don't know if that's good or bad, Maya replied. Echo's crystalline face shifted into what might have been a smile. Different is not always bad. Sometimes different is necessary. Over the following days, Maya found herself spending more time with the Academy's outcasts. Besides Thrix and Echo, there was Ripple, a void dancer whose ability to phase in and out of reality was weaker than normal. There was also Buzz, a young member of the insectoid collective whose connection to the hive mind was so poor that they had to think for themselves most of the time. None of them fit the perfect molds their species expected. But together they formed something unexpected, a study group that approached problems from completely different angles. Their first real success came during Professor Zur's crisis simulation class. The assignment was to design a first contact protocol for encountering a completely unknown alien species. The other students created detailed logical frameworks, step-by-step procedures, and mathematical models for predicting alien behavior. Maya's group did something different. They focused on all the ways first contact could go wrong. What if they communicate through smell and we accidentally insult them with our deodorant? Maya asked. What if their concept of time is totally different and they think we're being rude by expecting quick responses? Thrix added. What if they're afraid of us? Echo said slowly. Fear makes beings do unpredictable things. Their protocol was messy and full of backup plans for backup plans. Where other groups had elegant solutions, Maya's team had dozens of what-if scenarios. Where others had perfect procedures, they had flexible guidelines that could adapt to the unexpected. Professor Zur examined their work with all 17 eyes. This is highly inefficient, he said. Your protocol would take 3 times longer to implement than the others. Maya felt her heart sink. Then Professor Zur continued. However, your protocol is the only one that accounts for genuine unpredictability. The others assume unknown aliens will behave according to known patterns. Your team planned for the truly unknown. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, Maya felt genuinely proud of her work. But the real breakthrough came when she discovered something that changed everything she thought she knew about galactic civilization. She was spending her free time in the Academy's vast archives, trying to learn enough history to keep up with her classes. The ancient library contained millions of years of galactic records, stored in formats her human brain could barely comprehend. But Maya was getting better at using the alien technology, and she was naturally curious about how things used to be. Deep in the historical files, she found records from something called the Chaos Wars. The name made her curious, so she dug deeper. What she found shocked her. Thousands of years ago, the galaxy had been very different. Hundreds of species with completely different ways of thinking and living had tried to coexist. The result had been magnificent chaos, incredible art, amazing discoveries, and constant conflict. Some species thought with pure logic. Others relied on emotion. Some were individuals. Others were collectives. Some existed in normal space. Others lived in dimensions that hurt to think about. The wars had started when different species couldn't understand each other's ways of thinking. Logical species thought emotional ones were dangerous and unpredictable. Collective minds thought individuals were selfish and chaotic. The fighting had nearly destroyed galactic civilization. The survivors had created the Academy system to prevent future conflicts. They established proper ways of thinking and behaving. They taught all species to value logic over emotion, efficiency over creativity, uniformity over diversity. It had brought peace and order to the galaxy. But Maya realized something that made her stomach twist with worry. The Academy hadn't just prevented chaos. It had also eliminated the diversity that had once made the galaxy amazing. Every species now thought in similar ways. They had traded their uniqueness for safety. As Maya sat in the quiet archives, surrounded by the forgotten history of a more chaotic but more creative galaxy, she began to understand why her human way of thinking seemed so foreign here. Humanity was like a reminder of what the galaxy used to be, before everyone learned to think the same way. The question was whether the Academy would see that as something valuable or something dangerous. And with the mid-cycle trials approaching, Maya was about to find out which one they believed. The morning of the mid-cycle trials, Maya woke up to find her uniform had turned completely white. She had learned that white meant the fabric couldn't decide what emotion to display, because the wearer was feeling too many things at once. Fear, hope, determination, and panic all swirled together in her chest like a storm. Today would decide everything. If she failed these trials, humanity would be locked away from the stars forever. If she succeeded, her species would join the galactic community. No pressure at all. The Academy's Great Hall had been transformed into an arena. Thousands of students filled floating seats that circled a central platform. Representatives from dozens of worlds had come to watch the trials. Maya spotted the 3 aliens who had taken her from Earth sitting in the honored guest section. Chancellor Vorthak floated above the platform, his crystalline body catching and reflecting the light from the 3 suns. Today we witness the mid-cycle trials, his voice echoed through the hall. These tests will determine which students advance to senior levels and which species have earned continued evaluation for galactic citizenship. Maya felt every eye in the arena focused on her. She was the only student taking the trials to represent an entire species. Everyone else was just competing for personal advancement. The trials consist of 4 challenges, Chancellor Vorthak continued. Pure logic, knowledge integration, social harmony, and adaptive problem solving. Students will be judged on accuracy, efficiency, and adherence to proper galactic thinking standards. Proper galactic thinking standards. Maya remembered what she had learned in the archives about the Chaos Wars. These trials weren't just testing intelligence. They were testing conformity. The first trial began immediately. Pure logic placed students in isolation chambers where they faced increasingly complex problems using only rational thinking. No intuition, no guesswork, no emotional responses were allowed. Maya watched through viewing screens as Zephyrian students and collective members solved problems effortlessly, their answers appearing as perfect mathematical equations. When Maya's turn came, she entered a chamber that felt like being inside a computer. Problems appeared as floating symbols and numbers that hurt her human eyes to look at. The first few were basic logic puzzles that she could solve with effort. But as they became more complex, she hit a wall. The 4th problem had no purely logical solution. It was a classic ethics dilemma disguised as a math problem. 5 beings would die unless 1 being was sacrificed to save them. The logical answer was obvious: sacrifice 1 to save 5. But Maya realized the problem assumed that all beings were exactly equal in value, which wasn't a logical fact but a moral choice. The problem is incomplete, Maya said to the testing system. You're asking me to make a value judgment without providing the values to judge by. Logic alone can't solve this because logic can't tell us what things are worth caring about. Warning symbols flashed around the chamber. Students weren't supposed to question the problems. They were supposed to solve them, but Maya continued. Every logic system starts with assumptions about what matters. Without those assumptions, pure logic is just empty math. This isn't a logic problem. It's a philosophy problem pretending to be math. The testing system shut down. Maya had either made a brilliant point or failed completely. She couldn't tell which. The second trial, knowledge integration, went much better. Maya's habit of making unexpected connections between different subjects served her well. While other students methodically worked through each piece of information, she recognized patterns that spanned multiple fields of study. When asked to design a sustainable city for a desert planet, Most students focused on water conservation and energy efficiency. Maya's design included all of that, but she also considered the psychological effects of living in a harsh environment. She added community gathering spaces, art installations that celebrated water, and viewports that let residents see the stars. Her city wasn't just sustainable. It was a place where beings would want to live. The judges seemed confused by her approach but couldn't deny that it worked. The third trial nearly broke her. Social harmony tested students on their ability to navigate complex interpersonal scenarios. But the correct answers all assumed that harmony came from everyone thinking and acting the same way. In one scenario, Maya was supposed to mediate between two arguing species. The provided solution involved getting both sides to abandon their cultural differences and adopt neutral galactic standards. Maya looked at the scenario and saw something else entirely. What if they're not arguing because they're different, she suggested. What if they're arguing because they're trying to force each other to be the same? Maybe the solution isn't to eliminate their differences but to help them understand why their differences are valuable. Red warning lights flashed throughout the testing chamber. Maya had given an answer that directly contradicted academy teaching. Diversity was supposed to be managed and minimized, not celebrated. The trial judges looked uncomfortable. Chancellor Vorthak himself came down to observe Maya's remaining answers. Every response she gave emphasized understanding differences rather than eliminating them. Cooperation instead of conformity. "Miss Chen," Chancellor Vorthak said when the trial ended, "your responses show a fundamental misunderstanding of social harmony principles." "Respectfully, Chancellor," Maya replied, "I think your principles show a fundamental misunderstanding of how different kinds of beings can work together." The arena fell completely silent. No student had ever directly challenged academy doctrine during trials. Then everything changed. Alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. The academy's artificial intelligence spoke in urgent tones. "Solar flare detected. Magnitude exceeds all previous records. Impact in 6 hours. All defensive systems are failing due to unprecedented electromagnetic interference." Chancellor Vorthak's crystalline body flickered with panic. "This is impossible. Our simulations show no star system capable of producing flares of this magnitude." Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the emergency lighting. Through the arena's great windows, she could see one of the 3 suns beginning to pulse with dangerous energy. This wasn't a trial anymore. This was real. The fourth trial, adaptive problem solving, had just become a test of whether anyone could solve a problem that had never existed before. And if they failed, the mid-cycle trials would be the last thing anyone at Nexus Academy ever worried about. Maya looked around at thousands of the galaxy's most brilliant students, all trained to think in proper, logical, efficient ways. None of their perfect thinking had prepared them for this. The question now wasn't whether humanity deserved a place among the stars. The question was whether anyone would survive long enough for it to matter. The Nexus Academy shook like a leaf in a hurricane as the solar flare's leading edge hit their shields. Maya grabbed onto her seat as the lights flickered and emergency sirens wailed through every corridor. Around her, thousands of students who had never faced real danger before sat frozen with shock. Chancellor Vorthak's crystalline body blazed with urgent light as he received reports from the Academy's systems. "All students report to designated safety zones immediately." His voice boomed through the arena. "Faculty to emergency stations. This is not a drill." But Maya didn't move toward the exits with everyone else. Something Professor Quen had said during the trial stuck in her mind. "This is impossible. Our simulations show no star system capable of producing flares of this magnitude. If their perfect logical systems couldn't predict this crisis, maybe their perfect logical solutions wouldn't solve it either." She pushed against the crowd of fleeing students and made her way toward the Academy's central command center. The corridors were chaos. Students from different worlds were panicking in different ways. Some froze completely. Others moved in perfect formation. A few seemed to be melting with fear. Maya found Professor Quen floating outside the command center, his jellyfish body pulsing with stressed colors. "Miss Chen, you should be in the safety zones." "Professor, what's really happening?" Professor Quen's ancient eyes met hers. "The solar flare is unlike anything in our records. Our shields can hold for 6 hours at most. Our evacuation ships can carry 60% of the Academy's population." Maya felt her stomach drop. "What about the other 40%? The logical choice is clear. We save those with the highest potential for contributing to galactic civilization. The computers are already calculating who deserves to live. The words hit Maya like a slap. You're going to let people die based on test scores? Not test scores, Professor Quinn said sadly. Logical analysis of future value to society. It is the only rational response to insufficient resources. Maya stared at him. That's not rational. That's just giving up. She pushed past the professor into the command center. The room buzzed with activity as faculty members and senior students worked at stations she couldn't begin to understand. Holographic displays showed the Academy systems failing one by one as the electromagnetic pulse from the flare scrambled their technology. Chancellor Vorthak noticed her immediately. Miss Chen, you do not belong here. Maybe not, Maya said, but I have a question. Why is the evacuation failing? Insufficient transport capacity, a Zephyrian faculty member replied with typical logical precision. Simple mathematics. But Maya had been watching the evacuation reports on the screens around her. No, that's not right. Look at the boarding rates. You have enough ships, but they're not filling up efficiently. Different species have different evacuation protocols and they're not working together. She pointed to one display showing a massive traffic jam at Docking Bay 7. The collective. Students insist on maintaining their mental networks, so they won't split up to board different ships. The Zephyrians want to evacuate in order of logical priority, but that means they're arguing about who goes first instead of getting anyone on ships at all. Chancellor Vorthak's light dimmed as he studied the data. Maya was right. The evacuation wasn't failing because of insufficient resources. It was failing because everyone was trying to save themselves the correct way for their species, creating chaos that prevented anyone from being saved effectively. What do you suggest, Miss Chen? Maya took a deep breath. She was about to propose something that went against everything the Academy taught. Stop trying to make this orderly. Let each species evacuate using their own methods, but coordinate the chaos instead of fighting it. Chaos led to the Great Wars, Chancellor Vorthak said firmly. Order is what saved galactic civilization. Order is what's killing us right now, Maya shot back. Your perfect systems couldn't predict this flare, and your perfect procedures can't handle it. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most logical one. Professor Quinn floated closer. What exactly are you proposing? Maya looked around the command center at faculty members from dozens of different worlds. Use everyone's strengths instead of forcing everyone to think the same way. Let the Void Dancers phase equipment directly to the ships, even if it breaks safety protocols. Let the collective split into smaller groups that can make faster decisions. Stop calculating the perfect evacuation order and start moving people now. That would be highly irregular, a crystal-based faculty member said. Good, Maya replied. Regular isn't working. Chancellor Vorthak was quiet for a long moment, his crystalline body pulsing with conflicted thoughts. Finally, he spoke. Miss Chen, if we implement your suggestions and they fail, thousands will die. If we keep doing what we're doing, thousands will die anyway, Maya said. At least my way gives everyone a chance. The Academy shuddered again as another wave of energy from the solar flare hit their failing shields. Warning lights showed they now had less than 4 hours before total shield collapse. Chancellor Vorthak made his decision. Implement Miss Chen's protocols. All evacuation teams abandon standard procedures. Use species-specific methods but maintain communication for coordination. What followed was the most beautiful chaos Maya had ever seen. Void Dancers began phasing critical equipment directly to evacuation ships, ignoring every safety regulation in the Academy handbook. Collective members split their hive minds into dozens of smaller groups that could make quick local decisions. Zephyrians stopped calculating perfect solutions and started implementing imperfect ones immediately. Maya found herself in the center of it all, not commanding, but communicating. She couldn't understand all the languages and methods being used, but she could help different groups understand what others were doing. When the crystalline students created temporary shields that bought precious extra time, she made sure the Void Dancers knew where to phase the most critical equipment. When Zephyrian calculations identified structural weak points, she helped human intuition suggest creative ways to reinforce them. Her misfit friends became crucial to the effort. Thrix used their individual thinking to find solutions no hive mind would consider. Echo's slow, careful analysis provided steady guidance while others panicked. Even Buzz's weak connection to the collective became valuable, allowing them to coordinate between disconnected groups. But as the shields continued to weaken and time ran out, Maya realized they were still going to lose people. The evacuation was working better, but it wasn't working fast enough. They needed something more than coordination. They needed a miracle. That's when she looked at the solar flare data and had the most dangerous idea of her life. With 2 hours left before the Academy's shields failed completely, Maya stared at the solar flare data and saw something that made her heart race with both terror and hope. The massive electromagnetic pulse that was destroying their systems wasn't just a weapon, it was also the most powerful energy source anyone had ever recorded. Chancellor Vorthak, Maya called across the chaotic command center. What if we don't just run from the flare? What if we use it? The Chancellor's crystalline body flickered with confusion. Use a solar flare? Miss Chen? That energy would destroy any technology that tried to harness it. Not harness it, Maya said, her mind racing as pieces of a desperate plan fell together. Ride it, like surfing a wave instead of fighting it. She pointed to the Academy's structural diagrams floating in the air around them. The Academy's crystal framework isn't just for show. It's designed to channel and focus energy. What if we turned the entire station into a giant energy conductor and used the flare's power to boost our evacuation ships beyond normal speed limits? Professor Quen's ancient eyes widened with shock. The energy levels would be impossible to control. Any miscalculation would vaporize the Academy and everyone still aboard. We're going to lose people anyway if we keep evacuating at this rate, Maya replied. This way we might save everyone. Chancellor Vorthak studied the data Maya was showing him. Even if such a plan were theoretically possible, it would require combining technologies and techniques from dozens of different species. No single group has the knowledge to implement it. Maya smiled for the first time in hours. Good thing we have dozens of different species here. What followed was the most impossible collaboration in galactic history. Maya's plan required every species to contribute their unique abilities and knowledge, working together in ways that went against thousands of years of established protocol. The crystalline collective restructured their bodies to create living circuit pathways throughout the Academy's framework. Their crystalline forms could channel energy without being destroyed by it, but they had never attempted anything on this scale before. Maya watched as dozens of crystal beings positioned themselves throughout the station, their bodies glowing brighter and brighter as they prepared to become living lightning rods. The void dancers used their ability to phase in and out of normal space to create temporary bridges between the Academy and the evacuation ships. These bridges would only last seconds, but those seconds would allow the ships to travel distances that normally took hours. Zephyrian logic specialists calculated the precise timing needed for everything to work. But instead of seeking perfect solutions, they followed Maya's advice to build in flexibility for when things went wrong. Their calculations included probability, trees for dozens of failure scenarios, and backup plans for backup plans. Even the faculty members who had opposed Maya's chaotic approach found themselves working in ways they never imagined. Professor Zur used his plant-like ability to sense electromagnetic fields to monitor the flare's approach. Professor Quen shared his ancient knowledge of energy manipulation techniques that most species had forgotten. But the most crucial role went to Maya herself. As the only human aboard the Academy, she was the only one whose brain could process the chaotic mix of sensory input needed to coordinate everything. While other species excelled at specific types of thinking, humans had evolved to be generalists who could switch between different mental approaches quickly. Maya, Thrix called from their position near the Academy's power core. The energy buildup is approaching critical levels. If we don't begin the transfer sequence soon, the crystal framework will shatter. Maya looked at the displays around her. Half the evacuation ships were still loading passengers. The solar flare was still building in intensity. The Academy's shields were failing faster than predicted. Nothing was going according to plan. In other words, it was exactly the kind of situation humans had evolved to handle. Echo, how long do we need to hold the energy bridges? Maya called to her silicon-based friend. 17 minutes and 43 seconds for complete evacuation, Echo replied in their slow, careful voice. Buzz, can the collective maintain crystal formation that long? Unknown, Buzz replied, their individual thoughts racing in ways no proper hive mind would allow. We have never attempted this before. Maya made the decision that would either save everyone or kill them all. We're not waiting for perfect conditions. We start the transfer now and adapt as we go. She activated the Academy's emergency broadcast system. All students and faculty, this is Maya Chen. In 60 seconds, this station is going to become the most dangerous place in the galaxy. We're going to channel a solar flare through the Academy structure to power an emergency evacuation. If you're not on an evacuation ship, find something to hold on to and trust that we know what we're doing. The truth was, Maya had no idea if they knew what they were doing. But she had learned something important during her time at the Academy. Sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem wasn't to find the perfect solution. Sometimes you had to find a solution that was just good enough to work and then make it work through sheer determination. The solar flare's main pulse hit the Academy like the hammer of an angry god. The entire crystal structure blazed with energy that turned the three suns pale by comparison. Maya felt the power flowing through every wall, every corridor, every surface around her. It was beautiful and terrifying and completely beyond anyone's ability to control, but they didn't need to control it perfectly. They just needed to guide it well enough. Crystalline students throughout the Academy began glowing like stars as they channeled impossible amounts of energy. Void dancers flickered in and out of existence as they maintained bridges between normal space and the space around the evacuation ships. Zephyrian calculations updated thousands of times per second as conditions changed faster than anyone had ever experienced. And Maya stood in the center of it all, making split-second decisions based on intuition, hope, and the uniquely human ability to find patterns in chaos. Transfer beginning, she announced as the first evacuation ship disappeared in a flash of light that was visible from 3 star systems away. They had 17 minutes to save everyone. Maya had never been more terrified or more alive in her life. 6 months after the Academy's destruction, Maya stood before the Galactic Council in a chamber that sparkled like the inside of a diamond. The new meeting hall was built from pieces of the old Nexus Academy, but instead of cold crystal perfection, it felt warm and alive. Each wall told the story of a different species, and somehow they all fit together like parts of a beautiful puzzle. Maya's hands shook slightly as she looked up at the council members floating above her. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the chamber, all waiting to hear whether humanity would be welcomed into galactic civilization or locked away on Earth forever. Chancellor Vorthak, his crystal body now showing small fractures from the energy he had channeled during the evacuation, spoke first. Maya Chen of Earth, you have completed your evaluation period at what was once Nexus Academy. The question before us today is whether your species deserves membership in our galactic community. Maya thought about everything that had led to this moment. The scared teenager who had been taken from her garage in Detroit felt like a different person now. She had learned to read alien languages, understand impossible mathematics, and coordinate the evacuation of the galaxy's most advanced educational institution. But more importantly, she had learned something about herself and her species. Before you make your decision, Maya said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, I want to tell you what I learned during my time among you. The chamber fell silent. This was not how evaluation hearings usually proceeded. When I first arrived at the Academy, I thought I was broken, Maya continued. I couldn't think as logically as the Zephyrians, or as collectively as the collective, or as precisely as the crystalline beings. I asked the wrong questions, gave messy answers, and made decisions based on feelings instead of pure reason. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. These were the exact traits that made many of them doubt humanity's readiness for galactic citizenship. But during the solar flare crisis, I realized something important. Every species here got to where they are by becoming excellent at one kind of thinking. The Zephyrians perfected logic. The collective mastered shared consciousness. The crystalline beings achieved perfect harmony. These are amazing accomplishments. Maya paused and looked around the chamber at all the different beings who had gathered to judge her species. But excellence in one area often means blindness in others. Your logical systems couldn't predict an unprecedented solar flare. Your perfect evacuation procedures failed when faced with real chaos. Your harmony-focused protocols nearly got everyone killed because they couldn't adapt to genuine emergency. A murmur of uncomfortable agreement rippled through the chamber. The evacuation had indeed succeeded only when they abandoned traditional methods. Humans aren't trying to replace your ways of thinking, Maya said. We're offering to add our chaos to your order. We're the species that asks the questions no one else thinks to ask. We're the ones who see connections between things that seem completely unrelated. We're the beings who can find hope in hopeless situations and solutions in impossible problems. Council member Zareth, an ancient being made of living metal, spoke up. But chaos led to the Great Wars. Order brought peace to the galaxy, Maya nodded. Order did bring peace, but it also brought stagnation. When was the last time someone in the galaxy made a truly revolutionary discovery? When did anyone last create art that changed how people see the universe? When did any species solve a problem in a completely new way? The chamber was quiet. Maya's questions had hit their mark. The solar flare crisis wasn't solved by any single species thinking perfectly, Maya continued. It was solved by different species thinking differently together. The crystalline beings provided the framework. The void dancers created the bridges. The Zephyrians calculated the timing, and humans coordinated the chaos. None of us could have succeeded alone. Chancellor Vorthak's crystal body pulsed with thoughtful light. What are you proposing, Miss Chen? I'm proposing that diversity isn't something to manage or minimize. It's something to celebrate and protect. The galaxy is big enough for logical species and emotional ones, individual thinkers and collective minds, beings who value order and beings who thrive in chaos. Maya gestured toward the chamber's walls, where fragments from the old academy had been arranged to tell new stories. Look around you. This chamber is more beautiful than the old academy ever was. Not because each piece is perfect, but because all the imperfect pieces work together to create something amazing. The council deliberated for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, Chancellor Vorthak spoke. The vote is close, he announced, but humanity has been granted provisional membership in galactic civilization. Miss Chen, you will serve as Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. Maya felt her knees go weak with relief. She had done it. Humanity would join the stars, but Chancellor Vorthak wasn't finished. However, this membership comes with a condition. Earth will also host the new academy that will replace Nexus. This academy will not seek to eliminate different ways of thinking. Instead, it will teach them to work together. Maya smiled, thinking of her misfit friends who had helped save everyone. Thrix, Echo, Buzz, and all the others who hadn't fit the old academy's perfect molds. I accept on behalf of my species. 2 years later, Maya stood in the garden of the new academy, watching students from across the galaxy learn together in ways that would have shocked their predecessors. A young Zephyrian was teaching a group of human children how to calculate probability, while the children showed her how to finger paint. Collective members worked on individual art projects while crystalline beings learned to appreciate the beauty of imperfection. It was chaotic, inefficient, and absolutely wonderful. Maya's communicator buzzed with a message from Earth. Her parents were coming to visit next week, along with a delegation of human students who would be the first of their species to attend the academy. She looked up at the stars, thinking about the scared girl who had been taken from Detroit 3 years ago. That girl had thought she was nobody special. She had been wrong. Maya Chen wasn't special because she was perfect. She was special because she was perfectly human in a galaxy that had forgotten how valuable imperfection could be. And now, thanks to her courage to be different, the entire galaxy was learning to be beautifully imperfect together. The stars had never looked brighter.